Yeah. And so, in a way, and she's completely rewritten him out of history. Now we know.
Meghan Markle has finally reached out to her father, Thomas Markle, who is fighting for his life in an...
What if a story the whole world thought it understood had another side hiding just out of sight? A side that feels more personal, and maybe a little more complicated than anyone expected. Recently, an old claim connected to Meghan Markle has started circulating online again, and it's got people asking a lot of questions. Her estranged father, Thomas Markle, says he's ready to speak from his perspective after spending years mostly staying quiet. Now, 80 years old, he says he simply wants his side of the story to be heard. According to him, there are chapters from Meghan's early life that the public never truly saw. He didn't step onto a big stage or call a dramatic press conference. Instead, he quietly sat down for an interview and started sharing memories from many years back. Among the things he mentioned was a claim that Meghan went through a serious medical procedure when she was 19. It's important to note that these claims have not been publicly confirmed, but Thomas says the memory has stayed with him for a long time. Thomas Markle explains that he was deeply involved in many parts of Meghan's early life. From school years to the first moments when she started exploring acting opportunities, he says he tried to support her dreams every step of the way. According to him, there are many personal memories he kept private for years because she once asked him to keep them that way. But as Meghan's public life expanded and the spotlight around her grew brighter, Thomas says their relationship slowly began to shift. He describes the change as gradual rather than sudden.
According to Meghan, she was very close to her father when they were growing up. Her parents divorced when she was very young.
The phone calls started happening less often. Family moments passed quietly. Conversations that once felt warm slowly started to sound more formal. Over time, he says the connection faded almost completely. And in his view, the role he played during the early parts of her life slowly disappeared from public discussions about her past. For years, he remained mostly silent while Meghan's career and global attention continued to grow. Now, decades later, he says he finally feels ready to speak openly about his memories after such a long stretch of distance between them. According to Thomas Markle, his decision isn't about chasing attention or money. He says it's simply about sharing what he remembers after carrying certain thoughts privately for many years. He often points back to May 2018, just days before the royal wedding that had the entire world watching. At the time, Thomas says he was recovering in a hospital in Mexico when his phone rang. He claims the call came from Meghan. According to him, the conversation felt short and very serious. Thomas says the discussion quickly turned to a request connected to old personal records from years earlier. He claims she asked him to destroy certain medical documents linked to her early adult life. Thomas says the request surprised him and stayed in his mind for a long time. He also recalls the tone of the call feeling unusually careful, almost like every word had been measured. According to his recollection, she said something that stuck with him. No one ever needs to know what happened in that hospital.
Thomas has gone into intensive care after being rushed to hospital for emergency.
A line, he says, stayed in his mind for years. Before that moment, Thomas Markle says he had tried to explain the growing distance between them as pressure from heavy media attention and the royal engagement. But after that call, he felt the relationship had shifted even further. He also claims the conversation ended with the words, "Don't contact me again. If you care about me, you won't." After that moment, he says communication stopped completely and the distance between them only grew wider. Weeks later, Thomas says a cream-colored envelope appeared at his home. He claims he recognized the handwriting right away, neat and careful, exactly what he believed was Meghan's style. There was no return address, only a Los Angeles postmark. He says he stood outside on his patio for a moment while light rain fell and a dim porch bulb flickered above him. He kept turning the envelope in his hands, wondering what it might contain.
Means not to offer him a message of hope, not to pray.
According to Thomas, he felt a strange tension even before opening it. He says something about that envelope made him believe the message inside could be important. Instead of opening it right away, he poured himself a drink, sat down, took a long breath, and slowly unfolded the pages. Inside, he says there were 7 handwritten pages. Every line looked neat and deliberate. No crossed out words, no messy edits, just steady handwriting from beginning to end. Thomas says the letter didn't feel casual or emotional to him. In his view, it read more like a carefully built message where every word had been planned ahead of time. The first detail that caught his attention, he says, was how the letter began. According to Thomas, it didn't open with Dad. There wasn't even a greeting like Dear Thomas. Instead, he says, it simply started with his name written in a direct and distant way. Thomas says another section of the letter made him stop for a moment. According to his account, the message suggested he had spoken to media outlets and had not protected her privacy. He says that claim surprised him and made him read the next lines even more closely. Then came a sentence he says stood out strongly. Thomas claims she wrote that he was holding on to things that no longer belonged to him. He says he read that line several times, trying to understand exactly what it meant and why it was written that way.
Father, the Duchess of Sussex, has managed to get a letter delivered to his bedside. On December 10th, a spokesperson for the Duchess...
As he kept reading, Thomas says the meaning seemed clearer to him. According to his recollection, the letter included the words, "You know which documents I'm referring to, you know what was said in those years. I'm asking you for the last time, destroy them, shred them, burn them if you have to. Don't leave them for someone else to find." Thomas says the wording felt extremely direct to him. It didn't sound like a casual request, but something more serious. He also remembers another sentence later in the letter that stayed with him. According to Thomas, it read, "There are consequences to holding on to what doesn't belong to you anymore." He says the line felt like a strong warning, even though it was written calmly. Thomas Markle says the final page of the letter didn't soften the tone at all. According to him, there was no warm closing or personal sign-off like "Love from Meg." Instead, he recalls the last line saying, "I am moving forward now. This is the last time I will reach out." He says he sat quietly for a long moment with the pages resting across his lap while rain kept falling outside. Rather than reacting with anger, he describes feeling a deep silence.
And do something and wait 30 days to get a response from Meghan and Harry. If it didn't get...
The kind that settles in when a relationship suddenly feels like it has reached a turning point. When he eventually stood up, Thomas says he didn't destroy the pages. Instead, he carefully placed them inside a fireproof box, locked it, and stored it away. According to him, the decision wasn't about holding on to resentment. He says he simply wanted to keep a record of what had been written and why those documents mattered to him. Thomas often points back to events from many years earlier. He says the story goes back to the summer of 2000 when Meghan was 19 and at home in California during a break from Northwestern University. According to his recollection, she had not seemed like herself for a while. Thomas remembers her dealing with strong fatigue and painful cramping that didn't fade quickly at the time. He says the family first believed it might simply be stress from school and time away from home. Thomas says the discomfort continued, and according to his memory, doctors began discussing the possibility of a more serious medical concern. He recalls Meghan appearing very nervous during that period and wanting to keep everything as private as possible. According to Thomas, she asked him not to discuss the situation with other relatives, including Samantha Markle. He says she didn't want it to become a wider family conversation and preferred to handle things quietly. Thomas says he respected that request and tried to support her the best way he could during that time. He also claims he personally covered the cost of the medical procedure. According to him, it was paid directly without insurance involvement, something he says he did simply to help his daughter during a difficult moment.
Not my doing. That's all her doing. And I'm going to let that be because I'm better.
Thomas remembers the clinic as a small and discreet facility located in West Hollywood. In his description, it was the kind of place known for protecting patient privacy. He also claims Meghan checked in using a different name. According to his recollection, the paperwork listed her only as Patient 1472, without a full identity attached. Thomas says he later returned to pick her up after the appointment, but when he entered the hallway, he says he noticed something unexpected. According to him, Meghan was standing with another woman he did not recognize. He describes her as having short, dark hair and wearing sunglasses. At first, he assumed she might have been a clinic employee. However, Thomas says Meghan seemed surprised when she noticed him standing there. He recalls her reaction as tense and uncertain, a moment that stayed in his memory afterward. Thomas Markle says that in that moment, no one spoke. According to his recollection, they simply walked through the hallway quietly and left the clinic without discussing what had just happened. He later said the atmosphere felt tense, even though only a few words were exchanged. Weeks later, Thomas claims he eventually learned who the woman was. According to him, she was someone connected to Meghan's early acting circles. He says he has chosen not to reveal the person's name publicly. In his words, the individual is still living a private life and may remember that day clearly.
She doesn't want me to see them. that's the way it's going to be.
Thomas also remembers something unusual happening while he stood in that hallway. He says he had been trying to call Samantha Markle to give a quick update about the situation while handling his phone. He believes he may have accidentally activated the camera. According to him, he didn't realize it at the time. A few days later, while scrolling through his photos, he says he noticed an image he didn't remember taking. Thomas describes it as a blurry picture that appeared to capture the hallway scene from that day. According to him, the photo seemed to show Meghan, the woman standing nearby, and another person further down the hall. He says the timestamp matched the exact date he remembers being at the clinic. Thomas says the photo was never meant to be taken, but he decided to keep it years before royal headlines and global attention ever appeared. Meghan's life looked very different during the early 2000s. She was building connections in the entertainment industry and trying to find her path. Around that same time, according to public records, she met film producer Trevor Engelson. According to Thomas Markle, Meghan's early relationship with Trevor Engelson appeared strong for many years. He remembers Trevor visiting the family home, spending time watching movies, and being respectful with everyone in the household. Thomas even recalls Trevor calling him Sir during those visits. Public records show the couple dated for several years before eventually getting married in 2011. From the outside, many people saw Trevor as someone deeply involved in Meghan's life during that period. However, the marriage ended only a few years later, according to reports and Thomas's recollection.
Contact or letter of communication with my dad by my sister, so there does still seem to be some type of disagreement about whether this letter.
The separation happened quietly. He says there was no large public dispute. Thomas recalls hearing that Trevor once received an envelope at his apartment containing both wedding rings. According to that account, there was no note or explanation included. Later, Thomas says a mutual friend passed along a short message that simply said, "Closure." Details about the situation were never widely discussed. Thomas also believes Trevor may have been aware of parts of Meghan's earlier medical history. He says this belief comes from something Trevor reportedly discovered during their relationship. According to Thomas, Trevor once came across a medical referral letter connected to Meghan. He claims the document was addressed under a different name and sent to a Beverly Hills post office box, which he says raised questions at the time. Instead of confronting Meghan directly, Thomas says Trevor chose a quieter approach. According to his recollection, Trevor Engelson reportedly spoke with Thomas Markle privately and asked a simple question, "Is Meg okay?" Thomas says Trevor then added another line that stayed in his memory for years. "I just want to make sure she's being honest with herself." That short exchange, Thomas says, lingered in the back of his mind for a long time. Years later, when Meghan's life gained global attention through royal news coverage, interviews, and documentaries, many media outlets began searching for people who had known her earlier in life.
Tragic news coming in. Meghan Markle's father, Thomas Markle, is undergoing leg amputation.
Trevor was one of the names reporters frequently tried to contact, according to public reports. Journalists reached out to him multiple times, hoping he might share details about their past relationship. Some reports even suggested offers for interviews had been made. However, Trevor largely remained silent and chose not to publicly discuss the relationship. There were no interviews, no public statements, and no anonymous comments attributed to him. For many observers, that silence was seen as a sign of restraint. Thomas, however, believes Trevor may have simply preferred to keep certain personal matters private. Thomas also remembers hearing about a moment years later during Trevor's wedding celebration. According to people who attended, Trevor reportedly became emotional during a speech near the end of the evening. Witnesses say he told the room, "There are things I'll take to the grave, but tonight isn't about silence. It's about finally breathing again." Thomas believes that line sounded like someone closing the door on a difficult chapter. According to Thomas Markle, Samantha Markle was one of the first family members who felt something unusual might have been happening during that earlier time. He remembers a period when Meghan had very little contact with the family for several weeks. At first, Thomas says everyone assumed she was simply busy or taking personal time after the school year. However, Samantha reportedly felt the silence seemed different than usual. Thomas says she eventually asked him directly if something serious was going on. According to his account, he told her Meghan was dealing with a personal matter and asked that it not become a larger family discussion. Still, Samantha remained curious. Thomas remembers once mentioning a small women's clinic on a quiet street, and Samantha later decided to visit the location out of curiosity. According to her account, the building appeared very discreet and did not have obvious signage on the outside.
as the father, the man who raised her solo when her mum ditched her during her teenage years.
Samantha says she briefly stepped inside and spoke casually at the reception desk, acting as if she were asking about services. While there, she claims she noticed a file sitting on the counter with a name that caught her attention. According to Samantha, the file was labeled M. Grant. She says the name stood out because it reminded her of a nickname Meghan had used years earlier in online chat rooms when they were younger. Samantha described it as a small inside joke between the two sisters, which is why the name immediately caught her attention. Samantha says she didn't confront anyone at the clinic that day. According to her account, she quietly left the building, drove home, and kept what she had seen to herself. Later that evening, she says she tried calling Thomas. Samantha Markle says when she first tried calling Thomas Markle, he didn't answer. She called again the next day and again the day after that. According to Samantha, several days passed before he finally returned the call. When Thomas eventually called back, Samantha recalls that he sounded exhausted. She says his response was brief and direct. According to her, he said, "She's okay. Don't bring it up. She doesn't want anyone to know." Samantha believes that moment marked a turning point inside the family. In her view, some relatives preferred to respect the privacy of the situation and avoid discussing it any further. Others, she says, struggled with simply moving forward without asking questions. A few weeks later, Samantha says she spoke privately with Meghan during a family dinner. According to her account, she mentioned the clinic and said she believed she had seen the file.
Letters, she was phoning hospitals, but we now know that she allegedly will not speak to.
Samantha says Meghan responded calmly. She remembers her saying, "Then you also know why I can't afford to be like everyone else." According to Samantha, the response didn't sound angry or defensive. Instead, she says it felt more like a quiet acknowledgement of the situation. Over the years, the relationship between the two sisters has been discussed publicly many times. Despite those disagreements, Samantha says her memory of that moment has never changed. She believes something important happened during that period. And in her opinion, the silence that followed did not happen by accident. According to her, several people eventually chose to keep the situation private over time. Samantha has often said that the story connected to that clinic has remained surrounded by questions. The facility mentioned in these accounts has been referred to as the Laugh Onto Women's Wellness Center, described in reports as a private clinic that operated in the Los Angeles area for years. According to various public descriptions, it was known for serving clients who valued discretion. Some reports claim the clinic attracted visitors connected to the entertainment industry, including professionals working in Hollywood. Employees were reportedly required to follow strict confidentiality agreements regarding patient information, according to journalists who later examined the clinic's operations. Privacy appeared to be one of the central principles of how the facility functioned. Staff were expected not to discuss who visited the clinic or what services were provided. For many years, the clinic operated with little public attention. However, some media outlets began asking questions about it around 2024. A few reporters who attempted to visit the location later described encountering tight security and very limited access to the property. According to those accounts, visitors without appointments were not allowed inside.
Seriously unwell father, Thomas Markle Sr., who's 81 years of age, fighting for his life in hospital.
One journalist claimed that when they asked about historical patient records, staff members declined to comment and warned that authorities could be contacted if the questions continued. Another reporter reportedly tried a different method to contact the clinic. According to their account, they sent several emails posing as a potential patient asking about general services. They later claimed they never received a reply, not even an automated response. Then in 2025, reports suggested the clinic underwent what was described as a strategic restructure. Reports say the change was not presented as a full closure, but more like an internal reorganization. According to those reports, part of the process involved moving patient data to servers located outside the United States. And some sources claim the records were transferred to a system based in Switzerland, which made them more difficult for outside parties to access. Thomas Markle says he had also tried contacting the clinic years earlier. According to him, he simply wanted to confirm whether his memory of the visit was accurate. He says he submitted a formal request asking if any records connected to that time still existed. Thomas recalls receiving a short written response. According to him, the message stated, "We cannot confirm nor deny the presence of this individual in our facility at any time." He says the reply contained no further explanation. Thomas also claims he later spoke with someone he describes as a former nurse from the clinic. He refers to her as Marina and says she worked overnight shifts there for several years, mostly assisting with post-procedure patient care. According to Thomas, she eventually moved away from California. He says that during a private conversation, she told him she remembered Meghan visiting the clinic and described her as young and very nervous during that time. Thomas says when he asked the former nurse to explain further, she suddenly became quiet and did not provide many additional details. According to him, the conversation ended without much clarification. He also claims they briefly spoke again in 2023. During that discussion, Thomas says the woman he calls Marina repeated that she remembered Meghan being at the clinic. In his recollection, she described her as appearing nervous and withdrawn at the time, something he says stood out to staff members working that shift. Thomas also remembers her mentioning another detail. According to his account, someone arrived to pick up Meghan that day who was not part of the family. He says the person helped escort her through a side exit of the building. Thomas believes the moment was handled quietly and without much attention. Taken together, he says these memories leave him with several unanswered questions. In his view, there was a private clinic that rarely speaks publicly, a former staff member who remembers parts of the situation, and records that may no longer be easily accessible. At the same time, Thomas says he wants to make one point very clear. He says he is not suggesting that having a medical procedure at a young age is wrong, and he does not believe anyone owes the public personal medical details. According to him, private health decisions should remain private. In Thomas Markle's view, Meghan later developed a public image centered on openness and honesty. However, he believes some people from her earlier life slowly faded from that public story. According to him, it was not necessarily because they did anything wrong, but because they were connected to chapters of her past that were rarely discussed. He points to several people connected to that period. There is the former husband who never publicly shared details about their relationship despite strong media interest. There's also the half-sister who says she once noticed a file at a clinic, though her claims have been widely debated. Thomas also mentions the former nurse who, according to him, remembered a young patient from years ago but chose not to speak publicly. And at the center of it all, Thomas says he kept what he remembers: letters, documents, and memories from more than 2 decades ago. Thomas says he once believed he was one of Meghan's biggest supporters, helping her pursue her early goals. Over time, however, he feels his role in that story changed in the public eye. According to him, he is no longer expecting reconciliation and has accepted that their relationship followed a different path. What he says he wants now is simple: to have his perspective recorded alongside the many other versions people have heard over the years. Some people may question his motives, while others remain curious about the story. But after decades of silence, Thomas says he finally feels ready to speak about what he remembers. If you watch this and have thoughts, drop them in the comments below. If this breakdown made you see things differently, hit subscribe and stay locked in for more deep dives like this. Don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who needs to see it.